Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the Township Mapleton Council meeting on Tuesday, October 24th. And I call this meeting to order. Please rise for O Canada. Any declaration of pecuniary interest? Seeing none, we'll move on from then. Confirmation of minutes. We do have regrets today from Councillor Martin and Councillor Tamlin. Neither could be present today. Resolution 4.1 moved by Councillor Ottens, seconded by Councillor Reed, that the minutes of the Township Mapleton Council meeting held on October 10, 2023 be confirmed as circulated in the agenda. Questions, comments? All in favor? I look to both of you to carry us through this. We have no matters arising from minutes and no matters under the Planning Act. We do have a couple delegations here today. And first up, we'll have Sarah Bowers-Peters from Crime Stoppers, Guelph, Wellington. Sarah, welcome.
Thank you very much for having me today, and I appreciate the opportunity to do a brief update of the activity of Crime Stoppers Guelph Wellington, and we're doing this in honor of our 35th anniversary, which of course is 2023. Okay. So just a brief overview for those of you who maybe are not familiar with Crime Stoppers Guelph Wellington. We came to the community in 1988. Crime Stoppers is not the police. We are a separate organization that offers an opportunity for the public to provide anonymous and confidential information that can result in crimes being resolved. We offer cash rewards if an arrest is made. A Crime Stoppers tip is a 99% conviction rate, so we don't wait till it goes through the entire court process. Once that information results in arrest, we're okay with authorizing the reward. We rely on fundraisers and donations from individuals, businesses, organizations, and other entities to pay rewards and operate the program, not tax dollars, which is a common misconception about our program. Okay. We can't talk about the specific occurrences that our information assists investigators with, but what we can do is we can refer to our statistics. So as of this year, beginning of the year, we've had more than 23,000 tips to our investigative partners, more than 1,500 arrests as a result of that information, cleared more than 2,300 cases, and our investigative partners have laid more than 4,500 charges, recovering more than $10 million of personal property, more than $27 million in narcotics, for a total of more than $38 million just for the Guelph Wellington area. Our board of directors have approved rewards in excess of $183,000. So for a small program, we're very busy and we've been rather effective. You can see just last year alone, approving more than $4,700 in rewards to tipsters. Okay. Fundraising is a large part of what we do. You can see on the left, we've received donations from community organizations. That's 100 Women Who Care Rural Wellington. On the right-hand side, that's the Mount Forest Shredding event. Just an example of a couple of the events, activities, and organizations that support us. Okay. I want to give an overview of some of the presentations that we've launched recently and the impact that that's had in the community. So this is 5 tips, 5 ideas, and 5 signs. The idea being that during the pandemic, our young people spent a lot of time online, and they were engaged by predators through social media and online gaming. Parents don't seem to be aware of this. The youth are aware because they're the ones actually being approached, but adults are more of the mindset of my child would never engage in this activity. And it's not about what the youth action is, it's what the predator action is. So we created this concept in concert with our colleagues at Guelph Police Service to develop 5 simple and actionable ways that adults can talk to their children about preventing grooming, to talk about cyber safety, and what to do if they feel their child is being solicited online. Okay. So we received funding from 100 Women Who Care Rural Wellington. I know a number of their members are from the Mapleton area. And as a result of that support, we were able to put together a comprehensive radio and YouTube video campaign. This helped push the information out to parents and let them know that youth are aware of online grooming. The schools are doing a great job with teaching kids about these preventative measures through the curriculum, but parents simply don't understand that it's happening. Okay. Another presentation that we launched earlier this year was Fraud Talk, and we've had a tremendous response to this initiative because we know how prevalent fraud is in the community, you know, whether it's a phone scam or an email phishing scam. So we've had a great response to that. Okay. And we just this month launched No Room for Hate. Now, these 2 initiatives, the Fraud Talk and the Hate Crime, are part of a grant that we received from the Ministry of the Solicitor General. And very excited to be able to get these funds in partnership with Wellington County OPP and Victim Services Wellington. I would like to take a moment and just draw your attention. We do have an anti-hate presentation coming up on November 18th. It's going to be at Aboyne Hall, the Wellington County Museum and Archives, starting at 10 a.m. I strongly encourage you to either help us promote this event or attend yourself. We do have a speaker coming that is a subject matter expert on hate crime in rural communities, and we feel it will be a very important message for everyone to participate in. Okay. We do have a number of other programs available for presentations, including Crime Stoppers 101, which outlines how to provide a tip and also how the Crime Stoppers movement became. Also, the Seniors Crime Stoppers message, the Student Crime Stoppers message, and a variety of human trafficking messaging, including Educate Parents and Children Together, community-focused human trafficking message, and a youth-focused human trafficking message. Okay. And to that point, we recently wrapped up our previous grant with Wellington County OPP and Victim Services Wellington, which was the HT and WC and SA and WC grant. So that's human trafficking and, of course, sexual assault focused. Again, a grant from the Ministry of Solicitor General. We have a number of videos on YouTube, which I would encourage you to check out along the sexual assault and human trafficking themes. Okay. Earlier this year, we redesigned and launched our road signs. I know there's a number in the community here that you have seen with the Crime Stoppers messaging, partnered with various local advertisers. And so this is the new look. It ties in with the new look of the truck that you saw when we did our photo earlier. But the idea is that we want to emphasize the call to action of say it here. If you know something about criminal activity, let Crime Stoppers know. Okay. We were very proud to host the Ontario Association of Crime Stoppers Conference in June of this year. This was a huge endeavor for a small program like Guelph Wellington, but we hosted the first in-person conference since 2019, which was very well received. We also did receive a number of awards, which was icing on the cake to be able to do that in your own backyard, but we were very excited to have that event in our community. Okay. So while I'm here, I have to take the opportunity to challenge council and staff to see if there's any way that we could partner further with you. Is there some way that we can work with the municipality to increase awareness of Crime Stoppers? Is there a local volunteer you feel would be a good fit for the Crime Stoppers Board of Directors? Because we're currently looking for those members. Is there a presentation that I've mentioned today that you feel would be of benefit to council or staff? Is there a partnership we could develop between the municipality and Crime Stoppers Guelph Wellington that would benefit the township of Mapleton? Is there an area that you would like to see Crime Stoppers Guelph Wellington assist the municipality? And are you following us on social media? So I'm not really expecting, on the spot answers right now, but something to think about and keep us in mind when, when life happens and you're looking for an opportunity, or you've got a pattern of crime in the community and you'd like to have some assistance with that. Crime Stoppers Guelph Wellington is a great outreach opportunity for you as well. Okay. And thank you for your time. If there's any questions, Mr. Mayor, I'm happy to entertain them.
Thank you so much, Sarah. It's great to see you out doing these presentations. I know I've heard them many times through the county and here, but it's fantastic. And every time you do a presentation, you update me on something, even if, all these years of policing I did, doesn't matter. I'm still learning some new things. I'm always shocked about this human trafficking. It just baffles me. I know it's always been out there. There's always been predators out there, but this is something that's really taken off, and I'm glad that we're trying to get a grip on it. And it's a difficult one to handle. So thank you for doing presentations and trying to reach out to the youth to help them understand. And you have the anti-hate presentation. Of course, you said get that message out. So I want to say it again. It's November 18th
at 10 a.m.
At 10
at the Wellington County Museum and Archives. And we do request, there has to be pre-registration, just the nature of the subject matter. We're putting safety precautions in place. So you must pre-register and you must bring your ID to attend. So
and where do they register?
Eventbrite.ca and then just search No Room for Hate. And if you'd like, we have that messaging on our Crime Stoppers Guelph Wellington social media, as well as the No Room for Hate social media accounts. So feel free to share it right from there.
We're sharing it right now.
Okay.
Other questions from members of council then to Sarah about Crime Stoppers? Councilor Ottens.
Hi.
Are you Crime Stoppers in any way or has been affiliated with Neighborhood Watch, or do you endorse that program? It seems to be something that used to be a thing and not so much, but I wonder if that would be helpful to something like Crime Stoppers.
The technology. Sorry, Neighborhood Watch is a separate organization. It is endorsed by OPP. I know it's one of the projects for community engagement and crime resolution. It doesn't really tie in necessarily with Crime Stoppers, only because we focus on the anonymity and confidentiality. So even though we have the same goals, we kind of go about it in different ways. Whereas my understanding of Community Watch is a little more overt and aware, and signs in windows and signs in communities and things like that. We're asking people to contact us and not be open about their affiliation with Crime Stoppers. So, but absolutely a great organization for sure.
Thank you. Anything else? Seeing none. Thank you so much, Sarah.
Thank you very much.
Really appreciate it. We have the resolution here, moved by Councillor Reed, second by Councillor Ottens, that Township of Mapleton Council received for information the delegation of Crime Stoppers Guelph Wellington, Sarah Bowers Peters, Program Coordinator, regarding a 2023 update. Any other questions or comments? All in favor? It's carried. Thank you. Moving right along. The next delegation we have, no stranger to us, Mr. Earl Campbell, Wellington County Councillor, also Chair of the Police Services Board. Welcome, Earl.
Thank you, Mayor Davidson. So Larry asked me to prepare some notes on what the county does for the new councillors, and unfortunately we're missing one tonight. So I started with the 2023 budget. It's 250 pages long. Copies are available if anybody would like some light bedtime reading. So basically what it is, I kind of went through with hit the major departments here. Move it down, that better, okay. So County of Wellington 2023 budget just shy of just over $250 million, $292,891,000. Revenue stream against that, mostly coming from the provincial, was 143 million. So the actual tax levy we raised was $120,491,000 for 2023. Roads Department is the largest or one of the largest of our expenses outside of social services. So basically we have a garage here in Drayton that we could throw a softball to from here. We have a new one under construction just outside of the village of Arthur. And then I'll just go through the, the local area projects. So the Creek Bank Bridge was redone this year down on 17. There was some work on 86 highway done in conjunction with Perth County. The one that everybody's curious about, the Bosworth Bridge is still in the planning stages, but they hope to start that early next spring, and that'll be about a 9-month road delay once that's because it's coming right out. And a total replacement going in. 2025 Wellington Road 10 has got 2 culvert replacements for 1.7, so they're fairly large structures. 2026 Wellington Road 11 has got a culvert replacement at 60K, so that's a small one. 2024 Wellington Road 7 paving from Rossay up to Side Road 3. There's 1.1 million budgeted there. 2026 Wellington Road 7 paving from Rossay down to Wellington Road 11. There's 2.2 million budgeted there. And the ones we all keep talking about, 2027 Parker, Wellington Road 7 and 12 is the intersection roundabout, 1.9 million budgeted for that. And before we get to that one, 2025 Wellington Road 8 and Wellington Road 9, which we all refer to as the S-bins, is on schedule for 1.8 million. At present, that one's only a verbal agreement. Perth County has verbally agreed to it, but there's nothing in writing yet. So until the ink's dry on that one, stay posted, but that's what the game plan looks like. And all of those projects are taken off the 10-year capital forecast in this rather light budget document. So that's the source of that information. Solid waste services. We have 1 landfill in the county. It's in Riverston. The Rossay transfer station, which is in Mapleton, is to be upgraded and has been on the block for 3 years now, I believe. Goes back to your time as chair, Greg. We're waiting on the MOE approval to actually spend that money to upgrade it, but the transfer station will be staying. The other big change coming in July of 2025 is the recycling program is moving to producer coverage, and we don't know what that's going to look like just yet. So your blue box will likely be changing to what we're not sure. And again, we're waiting to see what happens. Now, other parts of the province have already started to roll out. So we're coming in about 2/3 of the way through the stream. So hopefully they've ironed the kinks out before they get to us. But that's something you'll be hearing from your ratepayers sometime in 2025. Police services. As Greg said earlier, I'm the chair of that particular committee. We've got 3 stations, 1 in Tividale, 1 in Aboyne, 1 in Rockwood. It's a standalone board, actually. So even though I'm a member of county council, I was appointed by county council to sit on the board. The board then elects their own chair. Currently, there's 2 county council members on that, 1 citizen appointee from county council, which is a gentleman by the name of Alan Alls from Huron, who used to sit on county council. And we have 2 provincial citizen appointments, both from our end of the county, Walter Treschel from Mount Forest and Ron Faulkner from Harriston, both retired OPP officers. So that's the makeup of that board. Excuse me, fee structure for that is based on a per property calls for service and enhancements. So there's 3 components to that billing. And it runs us about $17.5 million a year out of our tax base. Social services, very large department, largest spend actually for the county, mostly provincially funded. That covers the Ontario Works program early on, which you have 1 in Drayton. Childcare, which Greg tells me even as of last Friday, I think there was another application went in. So that's something that Mapleton is currently missing, but is on the county horizon to support that. Housing units. The county owns 1,189 affordable housing, supported housing units. There's another 1,415 that are supported with tax relief and RGI support. So in Mapleton, we don't have any of those units here, but for example, the Maribor Terrace, the Conestoga Crest, both receive tax relief from the county. They also get RGI supports, which means if Mabel can't afford to pay the market rent for that unit, she pays what she can afford and the county tops that up. And it keeps those local nonprofits whole so that they're allowed to continue to operate. And then on top of that, there's another 580 rent support supplemental agreements. So if somebody's living in a landlord's unit and can't afford the rent, the county will then kick in to help keep that person in that unit. So even though nobody sees it up front, we're very active in affordable housing within the county. Ambulance services, that's a service that's actually governed by so just to back up for 30 seconds, social services for the county and the city of Guelph is done by the county. We're the provincial appointees to do that. On the reverse side of that, ambulance services for the City of Guelph and the County of Wellington are run by the City of Guelph. So we get our ambulance service from them. You got one station in Drayton, which is the back of the fire hall. You've got a second 3-bay unit in the old county shed building, which is being used for training and supporting an in-home services program, which is designed to reduce the number of ambulance calls by meeting people in need in their homes, making sure they're taking their meds and staying healthy. So, and on a capital side, we're looking at some new halls that's on hold right now, waiting for a new study to figure out where best to spend that money and whether we can even afford to spend it at this point, because the price of those halls has gone up rather significantly since the last time we looked at it. Information, Heritage and Seniors is another committee that covers the library system, the museum, and the seniors home. So currently we're working on the last library in the system. So there's 14 libraries in Wellington County. They've all been redone, refurbished, or new builds in the last 21 or 22 years. The last one is now going into Erin. It's an old grist mill that's being restored. And that current Erin branch is in the Center 2000, I think is the proper name for it, but it's attached to the high school. So it was a 25-year lease situation, but expires in 2025. So the county's building a new one down there. Wellington County Museum has opened already a new Indigenous Gardens and Meeting Place, just on the north side of the property. And there's a new pavilion planned in there for next year. And then, of course, operation of Wellington Terrace, there's 168 beds that we service seniors with there. Planning Committee does land division, official plan amendments, planning services for some municipalities. You all know Linda Redmond, who used to work for the county, and you've got Michelle Brown. Thank you. I was going to say right, and I knew that wasn't right coming out of my mouth. So anyways, they also take care of emergency services, climate mitigation, a green legacy program, which if you're not familiar with that, the county has 2 nurseries in the county that grows trees and distributes trees. That's actually the largest municipal tree program in North America. And that's been going for 20 some odd years as well. And then we move on to Economic Development Committee. They support businesses. Middle of COVID, we did $1 million loan program to, it was around 100 businesses, just shy of that actually took advantage of the program. Those repayments have started. We've only got one loan that's suspected to be in default. So, I mean, it was a well-received program done through the Community Futures programs. They also support Smart Cities, the RideWell program, which was your in-house taxi program, which has got another 1.5 years to go on it, on that pilot. And of course, they do signage around the county as well for businesses, and they're involved in your community improvement program. So they're the governing committee that reviews those. And then last but not least, the FNHR committee, which I'm also a member of, which is Administration, Finance, Human Resources. They couldn't get anything shorter than that. And they do the budget reviews, so that they're responsible for this little light reading document. Take care of the investments, the insurances, and then of course, human resources when it comes to policies and that type of thing. The only thing new on the horizon on that one that I would mention, because you people have long time been supporters of it, there has been an approach just this past month that's going to council on Thursday for support for doctor recruitment program countywide. And of course, Mapleton, I believe 20+ years, you guys have been kicking in 10,000 a year to the local program. So that's being reviewed. And the warden has taken that one on to talk to the local partners to make sure they're in agreement with the other group that's proposing, but it's something that the county's looking at doing. So that's basically the 10-cent tour of the community structure at the county. And I'm happy to answer any questions that I can answer.
Thank you, Earl, very much for that presentation. Have any questions or comments at this point in time? Got a good overview there of what the county does, and as well as what some of the spends are. And we know that we got our budget coming up shortly. I know we're doing ours here locally, starting today, but county, they're still internal. We'll see that November, I think it is. It's our first meeting or 5th.
Yeah, we've had one meeting in October where we did an overview. Basically, staff at this point are looking at 4%, roughly. And there seems to be support around the shoe for that. Our historical has been 2%. So we'll see whether they actually come back with something like that. But yeah, it starts going to committees in November. You're correct. The preliminary draft 2024 budget and the revised 10-year plans. The 10-year plans are going to be of interest because our capital costs have escalated so much that we have to look at our schedules. So the Arthur Rhodes Garage, for example, significantly over budget, still approved. It's going ahead. But originally we had 5 more to do, if I don't stand to be corrected, on a 2-year cycle. So we're going to do one every other year. Based on the current pricing, we can't afford to do that without raising taxes to cover it or significantly draining reserves. So there's going to be some horse trading, for lack of a better choice of words, as to how we're going to manage that schedule, whether we're going to stick to it and pay the price or whether we're going to delay it out a little bit to soften the blow. So, and those discussions are ongoing.
Heavy discussions at the county level when it comes to a lot of those projects. And as Earl mentioned, we had that conversation earlier this month, and November will be budget month with every committee and then hopefully finalize it. But lots of work to be done. Questions, comments, other things? Nothing? Amanda, you got anything? Okay, thank you very much, Earl.
Thank you for your time.
Have your resolution 7.2 moved by Councillor Otten, second by Councillor Reed. The Township Mapleton Council received for information the delegation of Earl Campbell, Wellington County Councillor, regarding a Wellington County Council update. All in favor? It's carried. We have no minutes from committees. We're moving right on along here to item 9.1.1. This is moved by Councillor Reed, second by Councillor Ottens, that Township of Mapleton Council received for information clerk's report CL 2023-21 dated October 24th, 2023 regarding an unopened, unnamed road allowance in Rosse, south of Laura Street, between Queen Street and James Street. And the Township of Mapleton Council declare this open meeting that the real property is surplus, and that further Township Mapleton Council has determined that an appraisal of the fair market value is not required, and further that Township Mapleton Council has determined that the method of sale is by agreement of purchase and sale, and further that notice of the draft bylaw declaring the road surplus be given in accordance with the Township's notice provision bylaw 2008-024, and further that the mayor and clerk be authorized to sign any and all ancillary documents pertaining to this sale and of said unopened road allowance. Mr. Clerk.
And 4 properties, and it's really a roadway to nowhere.
And questions from council on the road to nowhere? I'm not seeing anything. All in favor? It's carried. There you go, Mr. Clerk. The roadway to nowhere is taken care of. There. Next, we have 9.2.1. This is where we put Mr. John Morrison on the hot seat. Mr. Morrison, you're up, my friend. Budget book 2024 to 2026, first draft presentation by Mr. Morrison. Some technical difficulties we're taking care of right now. Bear with us. Beep. Always had that on the elevator music, something like that. You could play something, sing. Oh, you could sing. Some bad elevator music. That's what we need. Mr. Morgan, you got something to say right now at all? It's nothing to talk about? Zippered, okay.
There we go. We have the agenda up, so. This is, some of these slides you've seen before, but I'm quite a believer in repeat, repeat, and repeat again, so that it becomes more and more comprehensive. And we're going to be talking a lot about, some of these agendas items. So how are we going to move this? Yeah. Okay, so we're going to go through the budget process. Want to talk about some of the strategies in terms of the pillars, because we're going to be talking about them right now, because there's some warning signs in the next 10 years about the problem with these pillars. We'll go quickly through the operating budget highlights. I want to spend a lot more time in capital, because that's where the problems are coming from. And then we'll look at a lot of the long-term trend lines. I'll give you a glimpse of what it might mean as a tax rate impact, but it's very preliminary. MPAC hasn't finished with its assessments yet, so I don't know what the growth level will be. And you already have the rates that we're proposing for in the rates and fees bylaws. So if we move a little bit ahead. So this schedule is, again, when we get to the open houses, it will help the citizens understand how a budget is put together. It's basically the base upon which a lot of thought process on the part of council, master plans, the strategy plan, and the asset management plan, which is causing the problems for this budget round. So the reason I wanted to talk a little bit about these pillars, and I'm talking about financial stability, vulnerability, and flexibility. I'm seeing threats to all of these based on what we're seeing in the capital plans. So let's move up again. These are just the measures. You've seen them many times. I might dwell upon them a bit more in an open house with citizens. So let's move up a bit again. So financial stability is one of the key ones here is the level of our reserves. And when we go through this, you're going to see the level of the reserves drop, which means is that our stability, our financial sustainability is going to be weaker. Let's move up again. In terms of vulnerability, we're looking at the debt limit. Here, I'm having to continue to issue debentures. It's going to stay at the levels you're seeing for 20, 21, 23. So, but it's not something that we can lessen anytime in the future. Let's move up again. And in terms of flexibility, if we don't see the increases which this is suggesting, or we don't find an alternative plan, we will see a reduction in our ability to show some flexibility with respect to the taxes. Keep moving forward. So this is where a lot of today's conversation is going to talk about in terms of asset management. We've been continuing to introduce to you more and more capital asset management concepts than we have in the past. So last year, we introduced you to the risk concepts and the life cycle approach to the management of those factors. We're going to be looking a little bit more in detail and introducing other concepts as we move forward. Let's go forward. Again, that's just the risk matrix that we're using. I'll have a chat on one element here. This is still an area that staff is having a concept about end of life, and when we get to it, it will make more sense. Let's move up a bit. Just want to show you the scary graph. We're working hard to get this graph replaced because next year in 2024, we will have to introduce to you a new asset management plan. And staff, Jamie and our new asset manager have been working with a great deal of care to actually lessen the impact, but we're still seeing significant issues. Let's move ahead. And again, the whole point of all this is about levels of service and how we define those levels of service. So we will have to come back and talk about this a little bit more when we get to the asset management plan. So again, in the past, we've always indicated that we wish that the tax rates stay to the level of CPI and not really at a minimum. I'm beginning to see with this new pressures in the capital that may not be possible as we're moving forward because there's a significant degree of pressure. So just to remind everyone that our level of support here is only 36 cents on the dollar. The county's taking 49 cents and the education 15 cents last year. This can vary year to year depending on the tax levies that are being raised by each level of government. So just to give you a brief overview of the operating, obviously we're going to see a levy increase of 4.26%. In 2025, 5.98, and back to our traditional targets by 2026, 1.86. So on average, that's 4.03% in each of the 3 years. In the documents, we've continued to show insurance as a pressure item up. I've increased it another 59,000 or up 15%. Just on Friday, I realized that our Ontario Municipal Fund partnership funding has been cut by $24,600. Materials are up 12%, fuel 34%. We're phasing in the market salary survey over the 3 years, 9, 5, and 5. We are seeing contractual services up 24%. I think $40,000 is we're introducing for spraying. And we're entering into a partnership with Central Wellington for an environmental technician to measure our gas reduction inventory. It's at the MFOA conference, and this is going to be probably as big as asset management in about 5 years. They are already talking about climate disclosures that are being required in our financial statements. And at the very minimum, you could see the province introduce them into budget and our asset management plans that will have a significant impact yet again on maintaining the assets. So this is big, and it's important that we do that. Let's move up. So I just wanted to show you that relatively speaking, we're doing very little with operating through this cycle other than just kind of treading water. The revenues for taxation is in proportion to our revenues we earn through fees and charges. The grant money, even though we lost 24,000 this year, has been pretty steady as well. Move up. And in terms of expenditure control, again, the only value of this slide is that it's probably pretty consistent. There's a couple of things that I would like to point out with the planning area. We've ensured that the tax base is not supporting planning fees because the planning department is supposed to be financed through a user pay model. And given the cost structure, that could see maybe a 30% increase in their fees. The fire chief moved bunker gear, the personal protection equipment, from capital to operating, because as long as it can only be really operating, because if a firefighter moves on, that equipment is no longer of any use to anybody else. So we moved it to operating. And as you can see, it's still not really impacting the overall rates and maintaining the status quo. So let's move on to the capital program. So the capital program is moved from up to $83 million in the 10 years. And we'll go through some of these areas in detail, because this is where I'm seeing some significant impacts. Let's move up a bit. So I start with the asset management uniform Act 2 classification. We introduced this for the building, and this has had a significant impact on the way staff is thinking about how we look at assets and how we divide the assets into component parts in which we can then figure out its life cycle, figure out when we should do maintenance. The power of the buildings is the most advanced area, but we're starting to apply the same concepts in other areas, and we'll see that. But let's go and look at what the building would see. So by the way, we're in the process of compiling all the project worksheets. So I think there's about 298 projects. This booklet is already 106. So we're going to be well beyond what the county shows as nightly reading. So it will be a 300-page book by the time we finish. But what strikes me about the expenditures in this facilities is that our normal concept has been about $3.5 million. This is double. And all we're doing here is maintaining, fixing things that have to be fixed. So when you get to the project sheet, you'll start saying, oh, got to fix the windows. Oh, they got to do plumbing. Oh, they got to do HVAC system. And the sheer number of buildings is significant. You know, I talked earlier about some of the concepts about asset management we're still working on is that in the Roth survey that you looked at, they were talking about that we should be replacing the wiring at PMD for a cost of about $600,000. That's not in the plan because A, it's $600,000, and B, we're not even sure that a home, I think it was built in the 70s, would we really seriously rip that out and put it in? So we're having to come to terms with what really is an end of life event. I mean, my own home was built in the 70s, and there's no way I'd go and rip out the wiring out of the house unless there was a reason I had to. So we're searching for reasons as to why or what is really a end of event, which will impact the total funding that's required over the 10-year event horizon that we're about to create for you next year. Let's move up. So here's the fleet. And again, you're seeing the fleet is also up by about $2 million from previous budgets. But again, you see how staff's thought process evolving. It's level one is it light, medium, or heavy? What's the service? Who's the service being provided to? Is it parks, cemeteries, roads, the fire department? What are the further component breakdowns? Pickup trucks, tandems, And, you know, you've got about 79 units out there providing a certain level of service. If we don't maintain it, we're going to cut the service. And that's basically why we're starting to look at that, because we could figure out what we're doing and how we're and what that unit is being provided to and why we're providing that unit. This is one of the, I think this is one of the good news stories that came out of last year. In the previous 10-year budget, we had a base mark cost of about $307 per meter. And we were going to do about 60 kilometers. There has been some changes with respect to the process. Instead of, this doesn't mean much to me, but instead of just shaving down to 2 layers, they're pulverizing and then putting a thicker level of cement on our roads and working on the shoulders. And they're doing it through their own project management, and they're having staff with our own equipment out there doing it. And that's lowered the benchmark cost to $287. Those costs come from what we actually did this year. So we're just projecting it forward. And the opportunity gain here is that over 10 years, that's a savings of about $1.5 million. So just being creative and thinking outside the box there, we saw a significant value increase. So in here as well, again, in breaking down an asset and components, we're now looking at road base as opposed to surface. Like roads could be broken down into many different kind of categories, but for now we just broke it into base and surface. So a road base in some of our rural roads could last 80+ years. It's not so much in our urban areas because, you know, they only last as long as the pipes under those roads survive, and then you're going to have to go down and rip out the pipes. And if you're down ripping out the pipes, you're going to be fixing the base, so it won't last as long as some of the urban, the rural township roads. And the resurfacing will all last about 20 years. So next year, you can see in the next few years, the plan is 9 kilometers of resurfacing, followed by 6, followed by 7, followed by 7.8. So there's a plan about how many kilometers that we are going to be redoing. And that also enables us to reduce the operating pressure, because, you know, we're going to be capitalizing the labor that's actually doing the work, $157,800 next year. Those are equipment charge out rates, $125,250 for the labor. So that's, you know, approaching $300,000 that didn't have to go through the operating, because we're now going to be able to capitalize and expense it over the next 20 years. Because they're doing their own work, they've got the equipment to enable them to do that, and they're saving a huge amount of money because they're not going to contractors on the open market and paying for those contractors at a price of $307 a kilometer. Let's go up. So this is an area, bridges and culverts. We're retaining about the same level of capital expenditures as we've done on the previous budget. I believe we're going to begin an inspection of culverts under 3 meters in size. There's an awful lot of culverts that probably, in my opinion, came or were put in those rural roads in the 30s. They're all concrete and they're starting to fall apart, and they can be very, very expensive. I think we have one here on Side Road 15, project 23037. And it's going to cost $485,000. When we do an assessment out there for culverts, the gains that we made in roads could suddenly be gone. And that's a huge concern for me. Again, we are going to increase the life of a bridge from 50 to 80 years. Some of these corrugated steel pipe culverts, 50 years. Some of the high density polyethylene culverts, 60 years. I don't know why the plastic gets a longer life than the steel, but that's apparently the standard out there. Yeah, I'm an accountant, not an engineer, so I'm learning all these wonderful terms. Let's go up a bit. That's an upgrade. I wanted to show you some of the pressure points. So fire is an area pressure point as well. Again, it's been because we've not had a sufficient increase in their reserves, and we're now at a point where we're going to have to go out and debenture, right? Or you're going to have health and safety issues. In 2027, we're looking at a replacement of one of the pumper units, and that will require us to go to market to get a debenture, because I don't think the money's coming from anywhere else but from a debenture. Let's move up. So when we get to the environmental service plan, this is all, a lot of it's growth related. It's all from the SEMA master plan. And what I'm going to show is, well, I would call it Plan B. Hopefully we will have a successful bidder from the RFP to help build all this, but in the case we don't, we have to have a funding plan moving forward. So as you can see, environmental reserves are fairly healthy. It's the closing balance of each year you should be looking at should always be in a positive number. If it's not, there could be an issue with respect to the funding, because we would obviously not have the money to pay for it. A couple of years there in this, you're seeing zero money coming out of the reserves because it's coming from either grants that we've already received, or it's coming from the development charges itself. So if we move up. So I'm anticipating that the development community could contribute $5.7 million, and $5.7 million comes from the last DC study that says that's how much money we could put into these projects. And the DCs would fund it, but they would, since there's no money there, they'd probably have to go out and get a debenture, and then we would have to fund that debenture back through the ongoing years, coming out of the fees. Meanwhile, that money would be used to pay for all those growth related projects in the environmental service area. So here's the issue that I see in the capital reserves. We're okay until about 2027. And in about 2027, I'm doing two things here. I'm having to see a significant increase in the level of reserves. And I'm probably going to have to go out and get a debenture for another $4.5 million. So in 2027, that's between all our capital needs and the fire, that's about $5.5 million. And what does that mean from the rates? Well, if you look at the budget book, I have in 2027 saying that the rates would go up 10.39%. And all that is in 2027 is 2% based on 2026 and increasing the reserves according to this, and that's going to be a 10% hit. So that would be significant, in my opinion. So we really have to start thinking about how we're going to fund this as we're moving forward, because we're having two major problems with the capital reserves. Again, it's all to do with asset management. It's to do with just maintaining the assets that you have. It's not even about growth related. There's very little growth related, except in the environmental service areas, and the DCs are contributing a significant amount of dollars. It's the pressure in our capital reserves is coming from just maintaining what we have. And once in a few years, when you start looking at the climate change impacts and the requirements that they will be wanting to make for changes, that's going to be even a larger impact. Let's move on. So this schedule here, we haven't had much growth this year. I think raw assessment growth was 1.32%. The weighted growth is 0.5. That's really not very good. But if that's maintains, because we won't really know what our growth levels are until late November when MPAC finally tells us, you might see a tax rate impact of 3.68%, which might be less than the rate of inflation. Let's move up. Water rates will be sufficient for the next few years. So I'm only proposing a 1.8. That's already in your fees and charges as we move up. So you see that in operating, we're continuing to experience the significant inflationary impacts. We got low growth going on right now. The assessment levies is going to average about just over 4% over 3 years. But it's maintaining the status quo is more or less what we're doing. Capital expenditures, $83 million. The asset management plans is just maintaining it, is putting enormous pressure, and that pressure is going to be felt by 2027. And it will put some of the ratios for our financial planning, our ability of sustainability is going to be significantly impacted if we don't see those rate increases or don't go out and borrow that money in order to fund it, because our only alternative is to defer capital programs, and that may have an issue with respect to maintaining the level of services as we have them. Again, we did see the significant savings as the benchmark in the road resurfacing projects. Again, that was 1.5 million over 10 years, and that is significantly appreciated that we were able to do that. But as I say, we're going to see a need for increasing the reserves in 2027. So is there any questions that you would wish me to answer?
Are there questions? Well, John, I can tell you, every time you get up there on budget time, I don't know, you kind of scare me, John. The numbers never look great, and there's always something changing. And certainly we can understand this year, we've seen that county, as Mr. Earl Campbell had pointed out earlier, that the numbers of projects we have seen skyrocket. We know we're seeing 40% increase in construction costs. So definitely this is not a great year. And we know that it's not going to get any better in the next couple of years. For us to come in with a 3.68 tax increase from what's going on with the economy, with the interest rates, I think that's pretty darn good for us. I think John, you and staff have done an amazing job of coming out with this number. As Mr. Campbell pointed out, the county's looking somewhere around 4. I think it could be even higher, but we don't know. I know other communities are looking at numbers around 6. So 3.68 is higher than what we want. But it's what's required, and still we are short in the future. Because you're looking at the rates over the next number of years that are in our budget book. They look kind of high in 2027. I think it is a big number there, jump. So thank you. And questions from members of council? Besides me. Yeah, we're going to do it all together here. John's done his presentation. We do have 2 resolutions that we'll get to after, but let's ask the questions on the budget. Let's ask the questions. John's up here. Let's get through them. I know my first question, John, I'm going to pull it off to you. The low increase this year, a low increase in water and wastewater usage rate, minor rate increase that we're seeing. We're going to talk about a little bit later and hopefully pass the rates for or the what are we passing later on? Fees and charges. Thank you. And so with the rates usage, if we have the 2024, and then we look at that debenture you're talking about in 2027, how do you see the rates impacted once we get that debenture and pass that to pay off that debenture?
Well, the debenture would be issued on behalf of the development community. And the DCs would be the development community are the people who are going to pay for the debenture. So we are allowed to contribute $5.7 million based on the last DC study. And that money will go into building the infrastructure. But as the DCs are collected through growth, that's what will pay for it moving forward. So it doesn't really impact the immediate rates on the ratepayer because the development community is paying for that.
Which is great news for the ratepayers.
Yes.
Councilor Rogers, question?
So this is general questions about the capital projects. So starting with a bridge. Have we ever, this might be more of a Mr. Morgan question. Have we ever thought about just not fixing some of these little bridges that are in the far corners? I'm thinking of MB 002. I looked at it today and it's on a side road. It's it's almost $1.5 million budget project in our, like, I think it's in 2024 and 5. So it's very up and coming, but it's a huge amount of money for a tiny little bridge that services one house. And they can go the other way. It's not nice, but they can. Have we ever thought about that? Like, is that something that we as a township would consider, just closing a bridge when it becomes unsafe rather than throwing all that money at it?
Through you, Mayor Davison, that is always an option for council. If there's always a different route for that individual resident to get out, and you always look at things like emergency services and stuff like that for them too, but it has been done before. There is a process. I think it's a little bit of an EA process where that's one of the options you have in closing a structure. And one option for that is just to close it by bylaw. And yeah, that is always an option. So as those bridges come through on our capital budgets every year, we'll review the capital and it always comes to council. That could be an option to push that bridge out or close it at that time. So that is definitely always an option.
Follow up then?
So what's the process then? Like, just let this carry on, stay on the budget, or do I have to make a motion or something? that
You
we
would have
look
to make a
into that?
motion to move it, or
Just look into the possibility?
yes, you can do that as well. If you wanted to look into, if you wanted to ask Mr. Morgan to come back with a list of bridges that we could move further on to lessen the impact on the overall budget, you can ask that.
Yeah, I would like to do that. I just do find that it's a lot of money for something that serves one house, honestly.
Okay, so the clerk is writing down
Yep.
a motion for you. The motion would be that Township Mapleton Council asks the Director of Public Works to come back with a list of investigate possible bridges that could be moved further along the budget or closed until more fund consumed at a further time, I guess.
And through you, Mayor Davison, I'll also bring back, a brief information, some brief information on the process. If that, if council
That'd be-
wishes, then that would be to help council make some decisions, maybe, lead in a different direction or give some information on that, how to move forward.
Clerk, would you like to read that off again, please?
Moved by Councillor Ottens that the Director of Public Works investigate the possibility of bridges that could be moved further back in the capital budget or closed.
Does that work for you, Councillor Ottens?
Yep.
Do we have a seconder? Councillor Reed? Any discussion on that? All in favor? That's carried. Thank you for that. We'll continue on. More questions, comments on the budget? Councillor Reed?
Through you, Mayor. I had a question under revenues. When it comes to, it says internal charges and there's nothing in for 2024, but then we see an increase for the following 3 years. I'm just wondering what that relates to.
That was the equipment. It has a lot to do with the roads. So the equipment charge out rates is an internal charge that we're charging for the capital projects. So where those rates come from, I believe they're not ministerial standards. Yeah, so I believe that the thing with, when you work in municipality, somebody's already done it. So the province has given us the charge out rates for certain type of equipments. So it would be, they're doing that so that if we were to charge them, they would expect it to be no more than this price. And that's where those charge out rates are coming from. So we're not just making up our own numbers. And the other part would be, well, we've already moved the labor into those capital projects as well. So what you're seeing is something new on the statements for the first time, because this is the first time we're seeing something that is a change in the process, and it's creating a significant savings for the municipality.
Item 19023 is the PMD parking lot pavement, 316,250. Glad to see in the budget. Are we doing a lot of the work ourselves to make that at 316,000, or is this hiring someone to come and do it?
To you, Mayor Davison, that will be, that's a budget estimate on per square meter that we had, but we will be doing as much work there as we can with our own forces. We do have the equipment like like John said, we can do it ourselves. We'll do as much as we can and hopefully keep that under budget.
And that's great to see, Mr. Morgan, because this is what we've looked forward to from council for a number of years, is having our own staff do a lot of the work to cut the costs down. So I'm glad that that's being implemented to and I think we're doing some of the culvert work ourselves as well in the budget.
To
Go
you
ahead.
again, so later in the council meeting, I have my capital update, which I'll speak to many of the things that we achieved this year with our own staff. Yep, doing quite a bit more.
So
culverts included.
in order to keep the reduction or the increase in our taxes, we're doing a lot more work internally to help mitigate that.
Yes, and I'll just give you one quick example of doing it internally is the other structure on Side Road 15 that we did this year. I restructured all the capital projects of this year. And I added that for council's permission to go out and, see how much it was going to cost. I think I had $260,000 left when we were done juggling all the numbers. And you'll see in the capital project that we did it with our own staff. We did hire a larger excavator. We had 260 and we actually did the whole project for 75,000. So that's kind of savings we're looking for.
Well, that's great. And council thanks you for taking that and moving forward with that. Other questions? Councilor Ottens?
Already, but why? I'm not sure if it's a fire department question, so why is the tanker and the pumper budgeted for the same year? Typically, these major purchases are spread out over the budget, so I'm not sure.
Through your worship, originally it was supposed to be next year, correct? The pumper, and we are embarking on a journey of maybe streamlining the process within the fire departments and perhaps looking at what equipment can be used and what maybe doesn't have to be replaced. So we moved it back 1 year, knowing that it's not going to be purchased in 2024. There's just too much pressure on the budget. But we wanted to make sure there's a placeholder there, but that might change again because we are exploring different avenues on what we can do and I guess streamline the process for what equipment we need at what station.
Mr. Barron? Does that answer your question?
They're both in 2027.
Yeah. And it could be changed.
Yeah.
Depending on what the analysis is of the investigation that staff are doing. Yeah, I'm going to ask this for question for council. 18078, which is future 50/50 funding. It says future 5,500 on here, John, just so you know. But the 50/50 funding, it's all set at $20,000. It's been $20,000 for a long time. Does council see a need to increase that throughout the years? Or should we leave it at $20,000 for 50/50 funding for our community ventures? Councilor Reid?
Have we actually used all the 20,000 in the last 2 years, correct?
Mr. Morgan, sorry, go ahead, Mr. Director.
I believe that we're getting close to using all the $20,000. We've been rolling a bit of forward in time. Might be a little bit left as we speak.
Go ahead, Councilor Ottens.
Has there been an issue where somebody applies and they can't because the fund has been tapped out? Or is it that they just know it's done so they don't bother applying? Like, I'm not sure. Do we need to put more in?
Yeah, I just asking the question over the years, because it's set at 20,000. I just want to make sure that if we leave it at 20, that's fine. But are we prepared if we have an overage from good folks in the community looking for 50/50 funding? Are we prepared to go over that $20,000? Or should we budget more? And that's our preparation. Go ahead.
I'm thinking leave it at 20, and then if there were special projects that come in that require more than that they would come to council anyways, would they not?
Well, it all gets approved through council at the end of the day, yes. Okay. Other questions there for Mr. Morrison? On his budget? Go ahead, Councilor Ottens.
I noticed that the PMB Arena has a new kitchen reno, as much as that needs to be done.
Mhm.
Do we want that in there before we know if we're gonna be ripping that all out or apart or something?
Well, I think it's put in place. If we don't get that funding, then it's already in our budget. We can remove it later on. Mr. Morrison, is that be correct for you to make sure it's in there in case we don't get that $12 million in funding?
Through your worship, yeah, you would want it as a placeholder, and if you get the money, then a lot of the projects might be revisited.
Thank you. It's a waiting game right now. I got it in here. Yep.
Given that we have EV chargers now, have we considered when we replace our local vehicles, like the pickups and such, to have electric vehicles? Since they only drive locally and they can charge locally, I don't know if that's financially feasible, if that's a good idea.
I think we were looking at that for some of the purchases we had this past, but there's really difficult getting them.
Oh,
Mr. Morrison, in the future, are we looking at purchasing those if they're available?
Doing in the asset management plan is to come up with drivers or weighted items in terms of deciding what we're going to buy and what we're not going to buy. What am I talking about? Health and safety is an issue. Delivering an asset that's in a more efficient way. Environmental, you're talking about the environment, right? So we have to think about what those measures are, and somehow we have to figure out how to measure it too, because we're not sure about that at this moment in time. So once we have those measures in and staff could then propose the projects, we could decide that based on the weighting, that's something we're going to do. Or we would come back and say, given the risk model, we are not recommending it because it's simply cheaper to do this or more expedient to do this. Again, at the MFOA conference, I sat with the director of infrastructure for Niagara region. I sat with their manager, and to them, when they have developed a lot of internal measures, cost is like just 10%. We're here in our model, cost is a good chunk of it right now. So we have to think about that as we move forward, and we've got some work cut out for us by next summer.
Thank you, Mr. Morrison. Item 23077 is municipal office building exterior, 205,000. Can you explain what we're doing at the exterior of the building? I know it's probably the roof, but I just want to confirm 205,000.
Siding? Windows, okay. I'd have to double check the project sheet. We believe it's windows.
Windows, okay. A lot of money in windows. Now you did speak, Mr. Morrison, in 2027, we already discussed the other debenture for wastewater, but you talked about 2027, $1 million debenture for the fire department. So that would have to be paid for by the taxpayers at some point in time then, that debenture.
That debenture would have to be paid by the taxpayers. So the taxpayers in this plan are not only paying for the fire services, but they're also paying for another $4.5 million debenture for other projects, because we're going to need the cash unless we do something in between, like raise the reserves.
And our fire department reserve is not going to be able to cover that, correct?
No, it won't be able to cover it because it's been too low for too long, and we just not collected enough funding for it.
So the question then, Mr. Morrison, is are we starting to collect the money now to start paying that off? like we were, I know, we know they have that debenture of $1 million. We know then that we don't have enough in our reserves currently. What are we doing to mitigate that right now?
Through you, your worship, we just had $219,000 transfer. We are now transferring $226,000 for next year. That's a 9% increase just in the fire department. Going from that modest $5,000 or $6,000. And then we jump to 231, to 236, to 241. Like I'm building it up. I'm trying to do it in a responsible way. You know, this is the hand that was dealt me. We didn't have enough reserves being transferred years ago. So now it takes time to catch up without it upsetting the taxpayers. So it will take a while, and that debenture would be needed for us to fund everything else that the fire chief wants in that capital budget for the next 10 years. Then you'd have sufficient funds moving forward.
All right. You know, the fire department is such an essential service that we have here in the community. Certainly don't want to see that underfunded at all. I'm glad to see we're doing something, but to look at having to get a debenture for that as well in 2027, I'm just thinking that there's something we might want to do earlier than that myself. Any other questions from council members? Go ahead.
I noticed, under water and wastewater in the capital area, item 18,026 and 19,001, one of 19 removal upgrades to other wastewater optimization. The amounts are exactly the same. That's something that is inputted in the record. Well, I don't think that's.
Through you, your worship, we're aware of that little glitch in the thing. Both projects are relatively the same price. So they're both spending about $5 million. I think it was just an oversight that we kind of did the same step amount. We'll fix it before the next draft. No.
That was my hope too when I saw it, but it didn't come out that way, unfortunately. Councillor Reid, anything further? So I'm going to put in a notice of motion right now, council. That Township Mapleton Council, just so you know, I am really worried about the fire department and making sure we fund them properly, because I think it's an important service that we provide. So there's no motions about the fire department. The Township Mapleton Council implement a 2% dedicated levy starting in 2024. In addition to the final year levy to be put towards the Mapleton Fire Department financial needs. And further, that this levy continue for a minimum the next 3 years and not to be discontinued until canceled by council beyond 2026. So that would bring the next 3 years of this budget. It would be a 2% dedicated for the next 3 years. And then the next council would have the option to cancel it. So that's what I'm putting on the floor right now. Do I need to read it again? In addition to the 3.85, dedicated to the fire department to help fund them properly and get them back on their feet. So I'll read that again. The Township of Mapleton Council implement a 2% dedicated levy starting in 2024, in addition to the final year's levy to be put towards the Mapleton Fire Department's financial needs. And further, this levy continue for at minimum the next 3 years and not to be discontinued until canceled by council beyond 2026. And I'm open to any suggestions to modify that if need be, but I want to put it on the floor. And I'm moving that on the floor. I need a seconder for that so we can have discussion. We got the seconder. So now we can have discussion on that. Go ahead, Councilor Reid.
I'm not sure how reasonable a discussion we can have when two of our members are missing this evening. So I think I'd like to delay that discussion until more people are present.
I'd also be interested in hearing what the public would say about something like that too. To bring that up as a possible suggestion at the public meeting.
Okay, I will remove that notice of motion and bring it forward at a future date of council then. Thank you. Any further questions? Mr. Morrison, could you just help council out again and the public that listening? 62,400 and 62,590. One is council appreciation, the other one is donation and grants. Can you provide information on what those two lines are, please?
Through you, your worship, you're looking at the council budget for operating?
Correct.
Correct.
Line 62,400 and 62,590. Council appreciation and donations and gifts or grants, sorry.
I believe that the donations and grants is money that you have set aside that you can provide to anyone that you feel is a worthy cause to grant that money to. The appreciations are, I'm not sure why we have a separate line, but historically it's been there to award citizens for their service to the community.
Thank you, Mr. Morrison. So there's no further questions or comments from council. I have a couple resolutions to read here. Any further at this time, Councillor Reed, Councillor Ottens? All right. Then I'll read the first one, 9.2.1, moved by Councillor Ottens, second by Councillor Reed. Township Mapleton Council received for information budget book 2024-02020. Budget book 2024 to 2026. First draft as presented by Treasurer John Morrison. Any further questions or comments? All in favor? That's carried. The next one is moved by Councillor Reed, second by Councillor Ottens, that Township of Mapleton Council received for information the presentation entitled Budget 2024-2026 as submitted by Treasurer John Morrison. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Moving on to 9.3 then is Public Works, and we have the quarterly update. And then this is moved by Councillor Ottens, second by Councillor Reed, the Township of Mapleton Council received for Public Works Report PW 2023-12 dated October 24th, 2023 regarding the 2023 Public Works Capital Budget second quarter information. Mr. Jamie Morgan.
Thank you, Mayor Davison and council. I'll always start it off by correcting my errors. So line number 2, PB 067, it's actually slated to start here in the next couple of weeks. So that is not complete. So just a little highlight there. All the rest of it seems to be in place. Yeah, most of our projects for 2023 have been completed, or if not, we are in process right now of getting them all completed. A few were removed from recommendations from council, like the MCC chairs and that they weren't really needed to be replaced. So we went and had a look at them with staff and they were good. A couple of highlights too is the Side Road 15 that I spoke about before, and we had quite a bit of money put aside for that one, and we were able to bring it in do it ourselves and bring it in fairly cheap. We will be looking, and that'll be one of our processes moving forward, is looking at some of these concrete culverts that John had spoke about on Side Road 15, that if we're putting back in a concrete culvert, it's going to cost us $400,000-$500,000. If we can get away with not doing that and putting in, like we did on at this location, put a poly coated, corrugated steel pipe in there. It's a coated steel pipe, about 60 years. If we can do that for $75,000 instead of putting in, that one was also quoted around $400,000 to replace concrete. We worked with Grand River And they allowed us to put in a round pipe, which is significant savings, right? It's a quarter of the cost. So we'll be looking for savings in that as we move around the township, looking at these culverts under 3 meters, which we do have a lot. So other than that, most of the stuff come in under budget. We did have a significant savings in our paving there, and you can see I did add in the numbers of the Murray Group for the gravel that we bought from them, doing it ourselves, the pulverizing, some inspection and testing from engineering firms. That was we do inspect, we do compaction testing on the gravel along with the asphalt. We're making sure we're getting our 5% AC in that. And then $122,000 is what John was talking about of our staff time that we use, as we did our own shouldering. We do everything like and that are some of our own grading and all that kind of stuff. So significant savings there in the asphalt. We'll be working towards that as we move forward over the next few years. Yeah. Other than if there's any questions, I think all the projects are moving forward fairly well.
Questions then for Mr. Morgan, Councillor Ottens?
Rehabilitation, it's been on there, but it's nothing's listed as, it's not in progress or anything.
So through Mayor Davison, it's kind of sitting in limbo. We're legislated by the province now through a CLI ECA process that we have to have all our bonds inspected. So RJ Burnside does those inspections for us. So they're going to move forward this fall with some of those projects. And before we go to teams, we're going to have them all inspected. They all need to be tested. So we're going to have them doing the testing as well. So we kind of put a halt to it with new provincial regulations that got handed down. So RJ Burnside has completed that process for us. And we're moving into the second phase of all the documentation that we need to do. We don't have the experience to do it as staff, so we do need to hire a third party. So there will be some money show up in that from this project. I think it's about $20,000 this year to get everything set up for our inspections for the initial. So yeah, we didn't want to move forward with anything before we're going for a direction.
Thank you.
Appreciate the quarterly report.
Yep, they're good. Any other questions, comments? I'll call a question. All in favor? It's carried. Thank you. And next we have 9.3.2. Moved by Councillor Reed, seconded by Councillor Ottens, that Township Mapleton Council received Public Works Report PW 2023-13 dated October 24th, 2023 regarding the Wyandotte subdivision phase 1 and 2. Final assumption request, and that Township of Mapleton Council grants final acceptance of the works in Wyandotte subdivision phases 1 and 2. Mr. Morgan.
Yep. So this is just the final step for us to assume the subdivision for the township. We were out there quite a few times this year with the developer, and everything has been fixed. And we have our letter from RJ Burnside, they do our development review, and we're satisfied that everything's done. And they're looking forward for us taking over, and we can release their securities. So there's a bylaw through the clerk to do that.
Thank you, Mr. Morgan. Questions, comments? All in favor? It's carried. Thank you. And next up is Recreation Department. Moved by Councillor Otten, seconded by Councillor Reed, that Township of Mapleton Council receive Recreation Report 2023-06 regarding departmental update, school program and fall events 2023 dated October 24th, 2023 for information. And you're on, Amy.
Good afternoon, Council. Through you, Mr. Mayor, we're excited to bring you a report of what we've been doing over the last couple of months and what the remainder of the year will sort of look like. So we'll start with our before and after school programs. We're very excited that the Drayton Heights program is running in full swing. We are very busy in the afternoons. We have 24 children who are there 5 days a week and about 11 kids who backfill to bring us up to our 30 kids that we are allowed to have. Our mornings have seen a large increase this year. We see 25 children in the morning. So there is about 5 spots available still there if anyone is looking for morning care. We do have a small wait list and we'll watch to see if it continues to grow. We have our mini movers and makers going right now. So that happens at PMD on Tuesday mornings for an hour, where children 18 months to 3 years are able to sing and dance and have instruments. They do a lot of gross motor play, art activities, and free exploration over there for an hour. Our public ice times and skate times for skating and stick and puck are out there. They are tagged at the top of our social media. So anyone that is looking for them can find them on our social media. They are pinned at the top of our pages. And our pickleball schedule is also out. Over the next couple of months in November and December, pickleball will have some cancellations as the halls are extremely busy with holiday events, especially on Fridays. So some past events that have happened over the fall. We participated in Culture Days with Economic Development, and we had some rock painting in the park happen. The response to it was actually quite overwhelming. I was surprised. I was there for the afternoon, and there was a lot of kids. We had lots of rocks, and by the end of it, we were out of supplies, but we had a good time, so it was good. We had our September PD Day. We had 25 children attend. We like to see 20 at our PD days through the school year just because we do have reduced staff. We can take more in the summer, obviously, because we have more staff in the summer. So we had a great fall, our first PD day, Fall Harvest Day. We recently on Friday night had our first youth social of the year. It was busy. It was probably our busiest one we've had to date. We saw over 60 kids come in grades 7, 8, and 9. And this group of youth they are exceptional. Were well-behaved, polite, and just wonderful to work with for the night. So we're looking forward to seeing what our next one in November will be. So upcoming events, we have a Halloween PD Day this week happening on Friday. We have another PD Day coming in November, and our holiday youth semi-formal social for Christmas, which is always really fun to see them dress up. And we have our Winter Wonderland coming that will take us into our Christmas break. So we will offer a camp program after the new year before the kids go back to school. So we are busy working through some new programs, and we thank you always for your support. So if you have any questions, please let me know.
Thank you, Amy. I certainly have been busy, and I know I've been to one of your youth dance nights or event nights, and it was busy then, so I can't imagine having 60.
Yes.
Wow, you guys are busy. All right, thank you. And questions? Councilor Ottens?
Mayor asked me about the youth social, instead of 7, 8, 9, to do 6, 7, 8, because 7 to the 9, grade 9 is no one associated with those elementary kids anymore, and they thought it would be a good. If grade 6s could come, then it would make the Moorfield kids sort of a nice introduction for them to start mingling with the Drayton Heights kids that they would be in school with the following year. Is there a regulatory reason it's 7, 8, and 9?
Through you, Mayor, to Councilor Ottens, we've done that typically because of their ages. So children in grade 6 in the beginning of the year are still quite young. Some of them are still only around 11, which is pretty young to have them out for a dance. And I would be concerned about liability, but we can set up a different type of event that we can allow those ages to cross over for sure prior to them coming over to Drayton Heights. If that makes sense.
As a follow-up to that, Amy, I know when you started the dances, it was a lot of grade 7, 8s showed up, not too many 9s, but you had 7, 8s go last year. And are you seeing more 9s show up this year?
Yes, so that was surprised us. We did have many grade nines come that have been traditionally coming over the last 2 years. They stayed with us. We didn't really expect to see them. But it's great that we did. So they were there. There was many of them.
That's great to see. And that's exactly what you want to see, that they're going to stick with the program. They like it and they want to come back to it. So great to see. Other questions, comments? Thank you, Amy.
Thank you.
Then I'll call the question. All in favor? Carried. We have a couple bylaws to approve on item 10. We're going to do these separately. So the first one is item 10.1, moved by Councillor Reed, second by Councillor Ottens. That bylaw 2023-057 being a bylaw to authorize the assumption of the infrastructure described in a subdivision agreement between Ira Ron Harrington, Kalen Homes, Inc., and the Corporation of the Township of Mapleton for registered plan 61M199 be hereby read a first, second, and third time, signed by the mayor and clerk, and finally passed this Tuesday, the 24th day of October, 2023. Any other questions or comments? All in favor? That's carried. And the next one is about our fees and charges. Moved by Councillor Otten, second by Councillor Reed, that bylaw 2023-058 being a bylaw to establish the fees and charges for various services provided by the municipality, and repeal bylaw number 2023-006 as of January 1st, 2024, and any amendments thereto to hereby be read a first, a second, and third time, signed by the mayor and clerk and sealed with corporate seal. Any questions or comments on this one? All in favor? It's carried. There are some items there for correspondence for council's direction, including 11.1, which is source water protection. And we do have Kyle Davis here. Hi, welcome, Kyle.
Thank you, Mayor Davidson, members of council. Pleased to present this report to you for your consideration and direction. It is in regards to changes that have been made to the Conservation Authorities Act in regards to the provision of services by the conservation authorities to the municipalities. So there is an outline in the report that talks about the timeline of how this has occurred. There are two conservation authorities in the township of Mapleton. I believe the Mapleton agreement has already come to and been approved by council. So this report is solely around the GRCA, the Grand River Conservation Authority. So there is a division now of services that the conservation authorities are already providing into three categories: category 1, 2, and 3. And category 1 are what are termed mandatory services that are covered by the levy, and the GRCA board or the CA boards can make those decisions and levy the participating municipalities. Category 2 are activities and services that the CAs have been doing for a number of years now, in some cases decades. However, they now require agreement by the municipalities to participate in. So we do have the category 2 agreement attached for your consideration. With from the GRCA. It's a memorandum of understanding. I'm just going to go to my notes here. The financial impacts of the category 2 is $8,789. That's for the 2024, the estimated impacts. And GRCA staff have indicated that the category 1, category 2 together will equal approximately what the levy was in 23. So there's not an increase in costs here. It's just a division of what they've already been doing into two buckets. So staff believe that and recommend that council should consider signing this MOU, as the work that has been happening with the GRCA has been very beneficial, and it's a collaborative approach. The wastewater plant optimization program is one example, which I believe Mapleton has made use of in the past, as well as surface water quality monitoring, and then interestingly enough, the staff time to deliver the rural water quality program. So the funding for the rural water quality program is county funded. However, the actual staff time to deliver that program to our residents is part of these category 2 agreements. I'd be pleased to take any questions.
Thanks, Kyle, for clarifying that point there, because I knew it was a county program as well. So That makes sense then. Questions for Kyle on this? Great job.
Thank you.
I'll call a question then. The resolution is moved by Councillor Reed, second by Councillor Ottens, that Township of Mapleton Council receive for information source water protection report SWP 2023-02 dated October 24th, 2023 regarding Conservation Authorities Act Memorandum of Understandings Agreements, and that Township of Mapleton Council approve entering into the memorandum of understanding with the Grand River Conservation Authority, and further that the mayor and clerk be authorized to sign the memorandum of understanding on behalf of the township. All in favor? Was carried. Thank you, Kyle. There are 3 items there for council's information. Couple from the county and of course one from West Lincoln. Anybody wish to speak on any of those? No notice of motion. Notice of provision, the Wellington Advertiser Community News, we have the notice of the public meeting, the fees and charges bylaw. And other business. Anybody have anything for other business? All right, so we do have the budget schedule. That's today was our budget first look. The fees and charges that was adopted today. November 6th and November 7th, we have 2 community meetings when it comes to the budget schedule. So November 6th, we're in the Alma Community Center, and November 7th, we're at the Moorfield Community Center. And both of those start at 7, Mr. Clerk, 7:00 PM. And November 14th, we'll have another look at the budget and any changes and council discussion. So the question I have for council right now is November 14th is our next council meeting. Does council want to have a half-day session just on the budget prior to November 14th? Do we feel a need to have a half day? I don't know. Just to know we've had it in the past.
Yeah.
So I'm just wondering if, is it something that we need to do? We did it.
I think they were there, but maybe chat to the other two.
Okay, I will discuss with the other 2 and see what they think. I would like to half day, would you? Okay, you're willing to if we need to? And if the other 2 don't think they need it, then we go on. Okay, thank you. And November 28th, of course, is the adoption of the 2024 to 2026 operating capital budget. So we have the 2 community meetings, then we have November 14th, another look, and then we have November 28th. So that half day would be on top of these other ones. So there's lots of chances to see the budget.
Are those community meetings open or are there presentations?
Mr. Morrison will do a presentation as he's done in the past, starting at 7 PM. And then public can ask questions at that meeting or at either of those meetings on the budget. All right, we'll move along then. We don't have a closed session. Have the confirmatory bylaw then. Resolution 17.1 moved by Councillor Otten, second by Councillor Reed, that bylaw number 2022-059 being a bylaw to confirm all actions and proceedings of the council of the corporation of the township of Mapleton be hereby read a first, second, and third time, signed by the mayor and clerk and sealed with a corporate seal. All in favor? That's carried. We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone, for your participation. See you next time.